Katerina, hi everybody.
Hooray! Great, we've lots of people, Caroline. We're
I can
very
see
lucky.
that. I can see we're onto two screens. This is amazing, and a huge step forward in what is now a 7-year odyssey for Ulysses for All. We've basically been reading Ulysses for All, or the group has been going this year for as long as it took Joyce to write the book. So we really have hit, a sort of a high point this year. And of course, next year is the centenary. And we really hope to have fantastic celebrations here in Dublin. The James Joyce Symposium will also be happening in Dublin. And I think Dublin is just going to break into, please God, all going well with COVID and everything. It should be a great place of street carnival and entertainment and education and party town.
You're all welcome.
Yeah. So where to begin? Let's go back to the very beginning. What is Ulysses for All? How did it come into being? I suppose should introduce myself first. So my name is Caroline Elbay, and I've been facilitating this course, as I said, going back to 2014. This is 21. We did a sort of test run in 2013 to see if there would be an interest in reading Ulysses, and the concept came about as a result of a lecture I attended, and in fact, folks, and it was a lecture given by the renowned Irish scholar Declan Kiberd. And during Declan's lecture, he spoke about how Ulysses had been appropriated essentially by academia, and how it no longer really was relevant, or wasn't deemed relevant or even readable to the ordinary everyday man and woman. And, like most people in Ireland and maybe across the world, there's nothing like a challenge, to spur you on. And so I kind of thought about it and approached Mark Trainer, who was the then manager of the James Joyce Centre. And Mark was very welcoming and very open to new and experimental ideas. And he said, you know what, let's just test the waters, let's put it out there. And we had 12 readers on our first first reading into Ulysses, 2013, and then we kind of got it onto a more formal footing going forward, 2014 onwards. And it really has gone from strength to strength. And what it saw was the birth of a sort of lifelong learning programme at the James Joyce Centre in Dublin, whereby we have Ulysses for All every spring, and then every autumn, winter, we have a course that would be much more varied. It's literary inspired, but it would be things like, Ireland on stage and screen, Ireland on stage and film, portraits of childhood in Irish literature. We did a fabulous one, cities in music and literature, and that was great because we basically went on a European tour and we used novels associated with various cities and then composers and pieces of music as well. So that was a very, very popular one. And so, as I said, it has kind of grown from strength to strength. What we would normally do, and what we have heretofore done, is meet up at the James Joyce Centre at 6 p.m. every Wednesday, and there'd always be a pot of tea and a pot of coffee waiting, because a lot of people were coming in on their way back from work, or some people were just going out. It was a night out, and we would meet, we would chat, and then we'd get down to work, So the structure that the course takes is sort of, it's a hybrid. It's not lecture, it's not all discussion, it's a bit of everything. What I would normally do is prepare a PowerPoint every week, which gives a sort of broad overview of whatever episode is under discussion on that particular week. And that would be posted up. We used to use Dropbox, we're now using Moodle, which is a far better platform. And that would be posted up usually by the Sunday in advance of the thing. So everybody would sort of read through that. We'd go through it briefly in class, and after that, we would read, Again, it was very democratic. People would choose sections of that particular episode that appealed to them most. And we'd ask for volunteers to read. There's no conscripts. It's completely voluntary. And we would read whatever section was, and then we'd get down to the nitty gritty and pick it to bits and analyse it and have fun trying to solve some of the many, many riddles that Joyce has infused the book with. We've had amazing fun doing that. There are, of course, various books of annotations, not least of which is Don Gifford's Ulysses Annotated. It's encyclopedic, line by line. Every line is numbered, and he will have an explanation, or at least offer an explanation or an interpretation for many of those. But even in Gifford, genius that he is, there are lots of gaps. There are lots of significance unknowns in there. And we have had such fun, like as textual detectives over the years, solving some of those riddles and puzzles. And what was Joyce really getting at? He's saying this, but maybe he was referring to that. Oh, for example, the inclusion of the word balbriggan in the Cyclops episode. He's describing clothing worn by heroes of Irish antiquity. And, we know through sort of textual genetics, there's a sort of a certain branch of Joyce studies where people analyse and go back like detectives on the various revisions and additions that came out over the years. The inclusion of the word balbriggan before the word pooties sort of was, we think, right, that is a reference to the sacking of the town of Balbriggan by the Black and Tans during the Irish War of Independence. So we've managed to unearth loads and loads of things like that, Our readership has been totally diverse. When I came up with the title Ulysses for All, I really had no idea what that all would encompass. We have had people, I'd say, from the age of 18 to the age of 88. We've had people from all walks of life, all professions and none. We have literally had teachers, housewives, lawyers, bankers, accountants, you name it. Joyce would be thrilled skinny. That's the only way I can put it, And of course, with all of these sort of the diversity of the readership comes all of these wonderful ideas and interpretations. Ulysses for all literally means for all. Everybody's idea, everybody's interpretation is valued, right? There's no such thing as, oh, that's a ridiculous idea, Everything is taken on board and we sort of work it through. And some ideas might be a bit more plausible than others, and that's fine. But, there's no judgments. We've also been really lucky in terms of our readership. We never encountered any experts or self-proclaimed experts. Everybody came with a very open and a very generous sort of attitude towards the book and towards their membership or their readership. And one of the great joys that I have personally seen over the few years are the friendships that have been formed, the friendships made, and I'm sure they will be lifelong and probably endure even longer than Ulysses for All. Who can tell, But that's been a great privilege to sort of observe from the sidelines, So this year we've gone online. Nothing can replace that meeting around the table in North Great Georgia Street, in the Kenmare room of the James Joyce Centre. I know some of you may be familiar with the building and some of you have yet to get there, but please God, you will get there. That meeting around the table, that sort of warmth, that sort of hospitality that's provided by Dorina and the staff at the centre has been phenomenal over the years, That sort of sense of intimacy, and really we're in it together, We are hoping, I'm hoping at least, and this is where you guys come in, I'm hoping that we can replicate that, right? In some sense. I'm hoping that you might show up of a Wednesday evening armed with a mug of tea or coffee or something and get that sort of coziness that we do have when we're in the James Joyce Centre. And that's kind of what I have to say about that. We sent out a welcome pack, as you know, and in that there's a few documents There's the welcome letter, which I wrote and signed, and I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart. Welcome, one and all, and it's absolutely great and a real privilege to see so many people absolutely interested in Joyce and Ulysses in particular. Another document I sent out was a rough guide to finding your way round. All right, this one. And this is basically an introduction, episode by episode, and you will see like the opening line of every episode. Okay, I'll talk a bit more about the book now in a few minutes, but the rough guide to finding your way around is useful and has been useful in the past. There's another document that I don't want anybody to be scared by, because this is suggested secondary reading. It is by no means compulsory, but it's just a list of other texts pertaining to Ulysses that a lot of people have found really interesting, because a lot of people come to the reading group with an interest in a particular area. So you might be interested in eco-Joyce. You might be interested in Joyce as a feminist, or some would say not. You might be interested in why was Leopold Bloom, a Jew, the central character in Ulysses. You might be interested in music in Joyce. So whatever lens you're coming at it from, all right, or maybe you've yet to develop one, this is where this list of secondary suggested readings comes into play, you know? So it's extensive, but it's not exhausting. And, you know, you might just find, and I will be referring to some of these books over the weeks as we encounter different themes, because of course, every episode has a sort of theme or subject area, you know? So that's that document. And finally, we have our weekly reading schedule. So this is our roadmap for the next 12 weeks. All right. This evening is really a meet and greet, and I'll talk for a while, then I'll stop, and then you're invited to talk, anyone that would like to as well. So this is your weekly reading schedule, or your journey, your roadmap, your nautical chart, whatever way you want to think of it. And you will notice in this, for the first couple of weeks, we're actually doubling up on episodes. So the reason for this is not entirely due to the fact that we're doing in 12 weeks what we would normally do in 18, because even on the 18-week run, we double up on these two. What's happening here is episode 1 and episode 4 are actually happening simultaneously in the story. So episode 1, Telemachus, is set at 8 a.m. in the morning at the tower out in Sandy Cove. Simultaneous to that, episode 4 is where we meet Leopold Bloom as he's leaving his house on Eccles Street at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's going down to Dlugach to get the famous pork kidney, right? So that's why we read the two on the same night. That's the rationale behind it. Simultaneous beginnings. A book with two beginnings, a book with two endings. That's what Ulysses essentially is, right? Again, the following week, which will be the 31st of March, I can't believe it's already, you know, more than halfway through March. We have episode 2 and 5, that is Nestor and Lotus Eaters. Again, these are happening simultaneously in terms of the time of day it is. We have Stephen Daedalus, our great sort of hero character, some might say Joyce's alter ego. We have Stephen teaching at the school in Dalkey, and in episode 5 we have Leopold Bloom making his way down to Westland Row, where he's going to collect his letter from Martha Clifford at the post office, and he's of course going to go into the famous Swinney's pharmacy, where he will buy the lemon soap and get ointments and things for Molly. So we have 2 nice weeks of relatively short, relatively simple, straightforward episodes. Then, just as we're beginning to feel comfortable, we go into episode 3, right? So episode 3 is where a lot of people decide to fling Ulysses out the window and never pick it up again, right? It begins, it's called Proteus, so it's all about change and shape shifting and whatnot. And it's Stephen on the beach. It's an episode that's very philosophical, so it's quite dense. But anyone that has done, a PhD in philosophy, you'll be flying. All right. It is Proteus. It is change. There's lots of Aristotle and whatnot in there, and this is why we come to it after 2 relatively easy weeks. Now, if you've ever picked up Ulysses before and you've read episode 1 and you read episode 2, and then suddenly you kind of hit what seems like the brick wall, ineluctable modality of the visible. That's how it begins. I often say ineluctable modality of the indecipherable. And a lot of people put it down, right? Fear not, we get through it. We've never had a dropout yet, right? And so we move on through the episodes. Proteus, Hades, Lestrygonians, Scylla and Charybdis, Wandering Rocks, Sirens, Cyclops, Nausicaa, Circe. There are 2 episodes that are not included in our reading schedule. Aeolus, which is the winds, the one set in the newspaper office, and Oxen of the Sun, which you'll be delighted to hear. It's one of the most difficult episodes. We're not leaving it out for that purpose, but on a poll, people would say, well, if you had to leave out 2, these are 2 that were suggested, right? Some might also say Proteus, but you're not getting away with it that easily. All right. So this is our reading schedule. What I do, as I said, is I prepare PowerPoints with an overview. The PowerPoint will be uploaded to Moodle. You will be able to go into your own Moodle account. It'll be pre-recorded. I'll do a pre-recorded lecture, a pre-recorded talk, not lecture, as the Irish would say, she's getting notions. Pre-recorded talk, okay? A broad overview of that episode. So just in case you miss a week for whatever reason, and we all know life happens, it means you can pop into Moodle and catch up, right? So even if you do have to miss a week, you don't have to miss what happened or what went on, all right? And that is the way we run it. Because we have Moodle now, which is a great platform to have, and thank you, Dorina and Ethan, who organised that. It also means we have a space for you, our readers, to upload or send to us, and we'll upload any interesting articles that you find relating to what it is we're talking about, So every week you will have an episode or 2 for the first couple of weeks. And as I said, we already have the list of suggested secondary reading, but over the years, readers have found wonderful things, that I didn't even know existed. And we share these. So it is a case of we're all in this boat. We're all on this odyssey together. I'm going to take a break for a minute and I'm going to hand you back to Dorina and then maybe invite some of you to come in on the conversation with some questions, observations. Let us know, are you a first time around the block on this? Are you a well-versed sort of Ulysses reader? And anything else that you might like to confess, though we normally don't do confessions on the first night. Okay, so back to Dorina. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. And now we have, it's wonderful that so many people could be here tonight. And I just wanted to talk a tiny bit about my odyssey with Ulysses. And I have to admit, I found it so difficult. And I don't know how many times I got to chapter 3 and put it down, Caroline, and I couldn't find my way into it. And for me, like Caroline was saying, everyone finds their own little journey through it, which is really interesting, whether it's Greek mythology. But for me, it was music. And if I may, because I know you're going to have to do so much work next week, I was thinking about 2 of the songs that appear in Telemachus. But there's so much music in the book all the way through. So what I might do is post some of my work up for you. I know last year we actually got to give everybody a CD. I'm not sure if they got a chance to listen to it, but for me, bump into so many songs along the way throughout the text, and some are familiar and some really aren't. But invariably, Joyce has such a musical ear. He was such a good singer himself, and he populates the book with so many musical references. People are singing, people are referring to a song, they've got a little earworm in their head for the day, or it's a character's leitmotif as they move through the book. So for me, in the first chapter, there's two songs in particular I was thinking of, because in Ireland it was Mother's Day last Sunday, and unfortunately, my children didn't really treat me very well. I got no cards or no flowers, or anyway, maybe that says something more about me as a mother. But the character of Stephen Dedalus is very interesting. His relationship with his mother, in this chapter, his mother has died recently, and this has such a profound effect on him. And there's two beautiful passages with two beautiful songs in it. One is a Yeats poem called "Who Goes with Fergus," and I'll post up a rendition that I perform with a friend of mine, Sinead Murphy. But when you come across it, you'll find it, and it's and no more turn aside and brood upon love's bitter mystery, for Fergus rules the brazen cars. And Joyce himself actually wrote some music to this Yeats poem. And Yeats, W.B. Yeats, Ireland's great poet that was celebrated with Biden and our Taoiseach at the St. Patrick's Day celebrations yesterday, comes in and out of Ulysses, but all of Joyce's work. And Joyce actually set this to music, so it goes, and no more turn aside and brood upon love's bitter mystery, for Fergus rules the brazen cars, for Fergus rules the brazen cars. And juxtaposed with this is a reference to his mother when she was alive, and she used to go to the Gaiety pantomime, the Christmas theatre extravaganza in the Gaiety Theatre. And again, this pantomime appears throughout Ulysses as well. And the song is "I am the boy that can enjoy invisibility." And the character in the pantomime could change. If he held a red flower, a red rose up, he could turn invisible, and a white rose meant that he was visible again to the audience. So these things are, and it's a jaunty music hall number, and it goes, I'm sure it would be nice to be able to vanish from sight, to be able to stop at the whiskey shop till after 11 at night, to consult an attorney and disappear when he speaks of fees, to travel by rail at the limited mail and vanish at tickets, please. Invisibility, you say, is just the thing for me. I am the boy that can enjoy invisibility. Invisibility, you say, is just the thing for me. I am the boy that can enjoy invisibility. So when you come across those songs in your reading, you'll have a little insight into them. And yeah, all the way through it, we have this incredible soundscape. So we try and fill you in. I'll try and post up some bits of music for you to help you along the way. Is that okay, Caroline?
That's great. That's wonderful, Dorina. And Dorina and Sinead are a formidable duo when they're in performance. In fact, they've taken Joyce abroad, not just all around Ireland, but, to, I don't know where, Zurich and Trieste in the summer school over there, and to Russia. And you were also in China, weren't you? I think.
Yeah.
Shanghai. So they've taken Joyce and Irish literature and Irish music, halfway around the globe and back again. So they are great. And hopefully we'll get a performance maybe from the pair of them at some point as well before this is over. If I could just talk about a couple of practicalities regarding the reading. This is the edition that we strongly recommend using, and it is the edition by Gabler, or Hans Walter Gabler. the reason we would suggest using the Gabler edition is because every single line is numbered in this book, right? So it does make for easy referencing, particularly in group or class situations. So if somebody is referring to a certain passage or a certain, quotation, we could just ask, oh, what line is that? And they'll read out the line number, and hey, presto, we can all arrive at the one line pretty quickly. Now, if you do have another edition, if you do have another volume and you want to use that, by all means use that. You don't have to go out to any, further expense. But to make life, as I said, a little bit handier for yourselves, Gabler is the edition that we're using. It is the usual scholarly edition that would be used in universities and academia, who think they've appropriated it, but they haven't. We prove that. In relation to maybe a guide by your side, I've mentioned Gifford, who is, encyclopedic and can be quite sort of intimidating. Ulysses Unbound by our own Joyce in residence scholar Terence Killeen has been a firm favourite with readers over the year. So if you're a novice, if you're literally just setting out, Terence Killeen is probably one of the best guides by your side that you could hope for. So that is Ulysses Unbound. It's also in the book, the list of secondary reading. Another interesting and very light-hearted take is Declan Kybert's Ulysses and Us. Now, many of you will be familiar with Declan, and thoroughly entertaining, thoroughly readable, and as I said, it's another angle, another take, and he talks about, things from a sort of a thematic basis, thinking, praying, eating, sleeping, singing, so on. So that's another good one. It's one that I particularly like to come back to time and time again. As I said, the pandemic is, unfortunately still upon us. Do you remember last March when it sort of happened? We all thought, oh, September. Well, in Ireland we did anyway. We thought something magical was going to happen in September and everything would be back to normal, or abnormal, as the poet Brendan Kennelly often says. But of course, it went beyond September, and then it went beyond Christmas, and Europe is now, I believe, facing into a third wave, which we had, unfortunately, just after Christmas. And so, as I say, despite all the tragedy and the hardship and everything else that has happened, it has taught us and encouraged us to think outside the box and to take Ulysses online and to embrace this even more diverse readership. One of the things I'm curious about, which you might like to maybe announce if you would like to introduce yourself, is